Hello everybody, it's Holger Müller here from Constellation Research, welcoming you to episode 30 with my fabulous co-host Liz Miller. Hey Liz, how's it going?
30! Woo!
We spared no cost, as you can see. We've wriggled out our CEO Dennis Kanemitsu to give us a custom background for the 30th.
Yep. I mean, listen, when you really want to break the bank on graphics budget, you come to CRTV. 30!
Exactly, 30. Perfect. We didn't have money to put the balloons in the background, but we're good to go. But hey, what happened this week, Liz?
Last week, Adobe Summit, annual celebration of marketing. We're gonna have. I'm actually going to talk to you guys a little bit more about that in a segment down the road. So I'm not going to spend too much time there. But you know, kind of had the big announcements. Maybe not some of the big fanfare announcements. Like there weren't as many kind of like wow, sexy announcements, but there were some important ones there. So we'll dig through those in another segment. 8x8 had the communications giant, of course, had a analyst summit where we got to preview a lot of new introductions that I would put into the category of putting employee work styles first ahead of putting kind of that customer experience message first. So it was a lot of things around how do we get the workspaces right? How do we actually make it easier for an agent? How do we make it easier for teams using communications tools to actually find what they need? You know, instead of having this, it's the CRM thing that you and I always come back to talking about, right, Holger? Where it's like, why do we keep creating these tools that then require 90 hours of training just to scroll down to find the one thing that you need, right? So we're starting to break that habit. So I think with 8x8's announcements, we're starting to see ways that are trying to create easier paths to create these better experiences. It just shouldn't be that hard. So
you're saying that marketers are finally worried about productivity, realizing if their teams are more productive, they might save a few people, or they can be more value-added work, or they could spend even more on marketing because their teams are doing things blah, 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 blah.
Well, you know, it's funny because I think that we've been kind of banging on about productivity for quite some time, right? We talk about productivity in the terms of efficiency. In other words, how can you get someone off the line faster, right? How can you get to more calls faster? But what everyone kind of seemed to ignore was sometimes that push for productivity through efficiency makes your people less efficient, actually makes your people less productive, and they're miserable. So I think that's where we're starting to see that shift. And, you know, it gets back to your favorite topic, Holger. I know it's your favorite topic. Employee experience.
What?
Employee experience. It's your favorite topic.
Don't get me started. Okay, fine.
Okay, we only have 8 minutes. Okay, Holger, what happened for you? Fill us in.
Number of different things, because you brought employee experience in the HR world, right? Last week, UKG, the company from Ultimate Software and Kronos, right now UKG, with a happy smile, by the way, an umlaut with 2 dots, but they don't call it UKG, but that's a different problem. They acquired a Centis Corporation out of Minneapolis, I think. Also a workforce management vendor, so kind of like buying into the space and doing more done. So they're doing lots of acquisitions in the past on the Kronos side especially, but some on the Ultimate side. But this is really showing that the doubling down happens to Latin America, kind of like a reaction potentially of Ceridian buying Adam HR as well, which also has a big Latin America footprint, that is the area to discover for these vendors. So it's going to be interesting. And just hot off the press, right? This week, Cornerstone bought Adcast, which is interesting, right? Cornerstone merged with Zaba, right? There's all this consolidation happening in the HR market. Now owned by Clearlake, they strike for the first time. And it's kind of like going back to the roots because they come from the learning space, and Adcast is, of course, in learning and skills space. So it's going to be interesting to see how much of an HR ambition versus a learning experience, LXP. Right, here we go. The experience word popped up again, happening there. And then on the tech side,
let me ask you something though, Holger, because I think that's really interesting. I find that to be really interesting that a lot of the learning stuff is kind of coming back and it's certainly fueling, it sounds like, some of these acquisitions, but is it a different kind of learning? Because I think we've been hearing about learning tools, learning platforms, training, but we have to train differently, right? Like when we're in this, whether you call it the great resignation, the great refactoring, is everyone's rethinking. They're also rethinking, wow, I don't want to spend 5 hours a month learning how to use something I don't actually want to use. Like, are you seeing that the HCM space is having to rethink what training actually is, or are we just trying to automate the hell out of it?
It's been going on since 5-6 years, right? Triggered by the technology being able to do more. It's all about the self, right? It's about the self-driven. I decide what I'm self-selected, everything basically, all the way to self-created, right? Creating of content of employees because they're annoyed about having to explain the thing over and over again. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has a video camera. Bandwidth is cheap. Storage is cheap. Right? There's a liberalization, a self-publication of content in the space. So everything is about the person being more productive. And of course, COVID started this massive learning need and desire, both from employees by themselves, self-driven, right, versus the companies saying, "Oh, we need to pivot somewhere and we need to get our skills upgraded." That's been going on since a while. Pretty much everybody is caught up with it. Now the question is, of course, where do I get the content from, right? So, and that's on the ad cost side.
But it's almost like it's funny because I've been hearing more and more examples, and certainly, more and more examples of like HR and kind of that employee engagement, employee experience conversation, taking cues from everything like customer service or even field service, right? Where now you're having your employees, how do you enable your employees to call a number and say, "Hey, I don't know how to figure out my new benefits. What can I do?" And automated content then comes to them. You can tailor that experience that comes back to them rather than having to kind of go through that old manual process. So it seems like everyone's catching up to that, that self-determination powered by AI. So it's cool shifts. What else happened? I know you got a couple more.
Switching to the tech side, right? Yeah. Oracle and earnings. The most interesting number on the Oracle earnings actually is always the CapEx number, which is dug down. You have to scroll all the way down. And Oracle's CapEx for the longest time was like steadfast at $1 billion a quarter, right? And that showed me that they're not really serious about building up their cloud. They spend the biggest amount now in their Q3, which is not even their biggest quarter. Q4 is the biggest one, of almost 3.8 billion, almost 4 billion on CapEx. Oracle always hates that. They give me calls afterwards. "Oh, it's not all going into cloud, it's other stuff because they kind of do little." But hey, if you're saying, I'm catching up, I'm surpassing AWS this year in instances, which they set as their goal, it's going to cost you some money, right? And staying with them, right, a little more closer to that, right, they're doing so well to run the database managed by themselves on premises, which is the whole Exadata Cloud Customer premise. But what was previously not possible, you either had that managed part, but you couldn't get the autonomous database. And autonomous database is super important, relevant for customers because self-driving, effectively self-thing, like in learning, right? The self-driving database, the autonomous database. And now you can do this both by doing VMs, which doesn't sound like terribly exciting, but for Oracle customers with an Exadata machine, now being able to run the Exadata managed service and autonomous database, which makes them cloud ready because it can move that directly into the public cloud if they want to, is a major step. And we know the world runs transactionally pretty much on Oracle everywhere.
Yeah. Well, listen, last thing on my side of the fence here is I think we're still keeping an eye out on what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, right?
That's right.
Aside from the horrible amounts of human suffering that are, of course, happening, with anything at this mass scale of violence is horrible. But what we're starting to see is that kind of some of the cyber defense that we put up really early on in this posture are starting to pay off. From what everyone can tell, most of the cyber attacks are still really just happening kind of government site to government site. They're not starting to really hit some of the critical infrastructure, which is a positive thing. But interestingly, once the SWIFT payments, once SWIFT got pulled from Russia, that has kind of become the new worrisome, target. Are we going to start to really see the financial institutions get hit because money can't come in from any place else? Right. So we're starting to shift the focus. But I think that, the big lesson learned here is where we're starting to see other attacks come from are outside of the Russia-Ukraine theater. We're starting to see increases coming from, Iran, things coming out of Southeast Asia. So again, it's that reminder of chaos breeds opportunity, right? When something is chaotic in one part of the world, your absolute assumption should be cyber attacks are coming from another. So we're starting to see that. We're starting to see that ramp up.
The interesting thing which dawned to me is kind of like on the cyber side with Russia and the US and the Western world, Western Europe, we're kind of like in a Cold War situation again. Nobody knows exactly what they can do on cyber, so nobody is really striking on cyber, right? And when two guys fight or not fight, right, there's room for the other one. So it's exactly the effect you're seeing. But it's kind of like no striking on cyber between the US and Russia right now because we don't really know.
Well, that, and it's still the same concepts of, mutually assured destruction, right? So when you have the two largest players knowing that all of the arsenal to be unleashed just means both sides are completely decimated,
Right.
you just have a picture of two people like holding fingers over a button. But the reality is that a lot of where we're seeing opportunistic attacks come from are from those smaller players. They're from outside of the main spotlight. And again, the shadows are kind of funny. It's where, opportunity comes from when everyone's looking someplace else, right? So
Right.
I think that's what's going to happen. But listen, Holger, once again, my friend, you and I out of time, bud.
Yes, out of time. The fastest
but-
10 minute, probably longer news roundup in
Warning.
enterprise software. Thank you, Liz.
You bet. Listen, we've got a really great show coming up for you guys, so stick around. We've got an interview with Avaya's CMO. I had a chance to catch up with him earlier in the week, so that was a fun conversation. I know we've got some conversations that you've been having. Listen, we're just going to keep this ball rolling. So, on to the next segment.
Thanks for watching.
Welcome back, everyone. Listen, I am joined here by one of my favorite people, Simon Harrison, CMO of Avaya. Welcome to CRTV.
Thanks for having me, Liz. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, it is one of my favorite conversations. You and I have this conversation just randomly, so that should tell people a lot about our friendship here. But we talk about this a lot, and I wanted to have this conversation on CRTV because I love it. We are hearing a lot about a certain word that is starting to hit buzzword status, and I want to stop that in its tracks. I want to have a really serious conversation about composability.
Okay.
Right? We cannot allow this to become a buzzword. So the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this is because you talk an awful lot about how enterprises need to really enter this experience economy that we're in. And it really does require not just different technologies, right? It's not just about the technology. It's not just about, the applications. It's really about a new way of thinking.
Yep.
So let's start here. We're talking a lot about composability, and I think we in technology tend to use the word a lot.
Yeah.
But what does it really mean? And what does it really mean for the experience economy? What does it mean for us as we are trying to have this really mandatory conversation? What do we really need to be bubbling up to the top of that?
Okay. I mean, you're right. The experience economy is just a phenomenon. It's extraordinary that in the last decade we've seen more innovation, they call it Industry 4.0, than we saw in any previous decade, which has led to all kinds of cool things. Our favorite home devices, virtual and augmented reality, the way we use applications, what we expect in engaging via applications, and how we communicate as part of these new journeys. The pandemic accelerated all this stuff. It was happening anyway. But the reality is that when it comes to things like how you engage with your favorite food prep service, how you might take advantage of something like a Peloton in your health regime, or whatever it is you're trying to do, it might be buying something very simple. It's all about the experience being created for that customer and the staff, two sides of the same coin, right? And so in delivering these experiences, you've got to think use case, you've got to think experience design, you've got to think more about the outcomes you're trying to realize, how to improve people's feelings about these things, as opposed to buying an app for that. The old world of there's a contact center, customer service kind of app, and then there's a unified communications app, and they're all quite, it's all about different buyers and so on. You've got to have the speed to value applications, don't get me wrong, you need these SaaS-based apps, but you need to be able to extend by design using the API economy benefits, be able to compose solutions. And the utopia is that is supported by a platform that has been thought about and has been designed precisely for that. Composability. Combinatorial innovation is not new, right? One app plus two apps equals 3-5 app type of value. But the importance is when you're buying now, don't go looking for the app for that. Go looking for a solution that enables composing the value you need to create in these quite precise use cases as part of this evolved experience economy, and you're going to be much better placed for the future as this world unfolds.
I love it. Because you know what? Our customers aren't sitting there thinking, oh, let me create a whole folder with all of the apps I need to have so that I can engage with this brand. Like, no one's that patient, right? They just want to go to one place and solve the problem they're trying to solve. So I love that because, you and I talk about this a lot. It's about thinking that comes first, and then how do you then have that flexible, composable foundation so you can build up from there and really have that connected experience that our customers already think they're having, right? They think they're already there. We're just having a real hard time delivering it, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think that we've been talking about this experience and kind of how to get there, and you're a real advocate for experience thinking, right? Like taking that beyond design thinking, really going to experience thinking and bringing in that partnership, bringing in that ecosystem. How does today's enterprise truly get there, right? So how does it get to a place where it can start looking at composable experiences, that foundation? Where do they need to start moving?
Well, you know, most enterprises are investing in cloud ecosystems, and maybe an AWS shop, an Azure shop, a Google Cloud Platform shop. They might have a bunch of applications. They will have that are SaaS-based, you know, CRM applications and so on. The world is not just moving to the cloud. It's been moved to the cloud in lots of disciplines, in lots of departments for a long time now. Communication and collaboration tends to be a bit more difficult because of that all-important voice connectivity and a few other complications. But ultimately, when it comes to realizing the ability to compose solutions, you've got to be thinking about, you know, the platform that you're investing in, the platforms you're investing in, supporting things like low code, no code, being able to and realize not just this, you know, not starting from the ground up with that low code, no code sort of approach, being able to again sprint to value with SaaS-based applications as a start point. But that, again, if you can think about this as a sort of a platform strategy, you know, a utopian design being that you're investing in a platform where the vendor, and I'm going to argue Avaya does this, is thinking about all these other ecosystems, and we're talking about multi-cloud, we're talking about multi-ecosystem, we're talking about how to bring these things together so that you can start to create for these really quite precise use cases. That's how we get it done, Liz. We think about total experience, you know, the Gartner term, they've used that a lot, but we are relentless about delivering a total experience. And so we don't just say, here's the keys to the app that we can sell you. We want to give you the platform, the access to the API economy benefits, and the power to compose these solutions. That's the relentless focus we have. And that's what really buyers should be looking at as part of getting going in an enterprise around being able to compose solutions. Got to think differently in the buying process.
And so I just want to ask the last thing I want to ask you though is, enterprises are kind of resisting that, right? Because when you start to think about composability, and when you start to think about that, like I think their heads all of a sudden go to like, I got to rip and replace, and oh my gosh, I don't want to do that. Okay, so how do you see the best of the best that Avaya is working with break through that stalemate of resisting this evolution to this composable thinking, this composable foundation?
Well, a bimodal approach is always going to be the way. You don't cliff dive. You look at how you can innovate, co-innovate. You can add to, you can complement what you've got. And again, this is one of our relentless focuses is around ensuring you don't have to cliff dive. You can start to expand and evolve based on investing in a platform that gives you certain value capabilities that are a SaaS-based model that are complementary to what you've already got. Start looking at the benefits of hybrid design and so on. So there's an important thing to be said around making sure that the premise isn't right. I'll need to now just get rid of what I've got. It's about how you can extend and then compose, even using some of the older or existing technologies with the new to create something even better.
Yeah, I love it. I'm now expecting Avaya t-shirts that say "Don't cliff dive." I'm just saying. I'm going to be expecting one of those in the mail sometime soon. Okay, I love it. Listen, Simon, as always, it's such a pleasure, and thank you so much for joining us here. Everyone, stay tuned for more.
Thanks, Liz.
Hello, everybody. It's Holger Müller here with a special guest, Maggie Hulse from Indeed. Hi, Maggie.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. And there's so much things happening in talent acquisition right now with the great reassignment, with people looking for jobs. You're like at the forefront of finding out at Indeed what's really happening here. What are the top 4 things that you see changing?
Well, as we exit the pandemic, I see 4 big trends shaping TA. as focus increases on automation, virtual hiring, skills-based screening, and workplace well-being. All of which taken together can help make hiring really simpler, faster, and more human.
Very interesting, right? And with the start of automation, I could say automation's been always part of that, right? What has changed? What is really new in automation? That will be interesting.
Yeah, look, it's absolutely true. It was true before the pandemic that up to 80% of a recruiter's time was spent on manual processes, screening resumes, scheduling interviews. And I think in this moment, as many organizations are, rebuilding their organizations, the interest in making sure recruiters can spend their time making connections with great candidates, the human part of hiring, is more acute than ever before. And we see organizations also really focused on how automation can help with applicant drop-off, particularly important when there's such a big mismatch between open jobs and supply.
Right.
With one solution we launched last year, Indeed Hiring Platform, we actually see the conversion of interested candidates from click to first interview is 3 times higher than typical ATS processes. So if you put yourself in the shoes of the TA person under pressure, they get to focus on the human part of hiring, and they get to make a lot more interviews and hires from the same pool of interested candidates. And that makes a real difference for them.
Right, that's great news, right? Because if you can put people faster in their seat and move faster, that's what it's all about. Nothing's more expensive than unopened, unfilled seat, open position in the company.
Right.
You also mentioned skills, right? There's been a lot of talk about skills. People want to augment their skills, learn, get better, skills-based, everything is happening. What's happening in talent acquisition with skills?
Well, we definitely see at Indeed increased interest in using screener questions and assessments for objectively understanding what candidates can do, and trying to think differently, to not necessarily rely so much on the traditional resume review, to focus more on potential. And we know it matters for job seekers too. They want to be given the opportunity to show what they can do. And so look, I think we've been working on innovating job seeker processes that can ultimately help job seekers. Indeed Hiring Platform, I just mentioned, literally has no resume review step in it. If job seekers have the objectively defined qualifications they demonstrated in the screeners or the assessments, they immediately go to schedule interviews. So there is no room for unconscious bias to creep in about what school they went to or if there was a gap in their resume.
Okay.
And that's ultimately, delivering a great job seeker experience, which we care a lot about.
Which is super important, right? Because the better job seeker experience will probably win out if 2 offers are at the same level, right? No question about it. Then you mentioned something near and clear to all our hearts is well-being of employees, right? Got very much important. So how does it affect talent acquisition now?
Yeah, well, look, I think we all experienced during the pandemic the increased focus on flexibility, for some roles, having remote work and having that benefit remain. I think we also see that the pandemic spurred a lot more honest and authentic conversation around work culture and burnout, mental health. And so we have a lot of organizations trying to convey in their job descriptions, in their brand content, on Glassdoor or Indeed company pages, what is the employer doing to help support worker well-being, flexibility, et cetera. And that makes a really big difference in their ability to attract and retain employees in this moment.
Absolutely, that's super important, no question about it. So we talked about automation, how it has changed. We talked about skills. We talked about well-being. What's the fourth thing?
The fourth is the adoption of virtual interviewing and what we expect to happen now that we're starting to exit the pandemic. We have a lot of employers, north of 80%, that have used virtual interviews as part of their hiring process during the pandemic, and 93% tell us they plan to continue because it's increasing their speed to hire. It's an easier process to manage, and it actually makes a better candidate experience. A couple notes on the candidate experience. Job seekers actually told us they feel less intimidated with virtual interviews versus physical interviews. And there's also, a benefit for diversity of candidates because applicants are really able to interview from anywhere. So it removes barriers. If you think about it, an in-person interview, you have to travel, you have to arrange childcare. So, our research says more than 80% of employers say virtual interviews actually enhance their diversity in their applicant pool, which is kind of an
Very
amazing
interesting.
number.
Well, very nice side effect benefit. And we're also used to do video conversations right now, right? It's actually stressful to think about, oh, I have to travel, go somewhere, pack things to do an in-person interview, right? So as this fades away. So very, very interesting, Maggie. Thank you very much for sharing these 4 key talent acquisition trends that are changing the market. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Hey everyone, listen, we are going to have a wrap up of Adobe Summit 2022. A ton of content to go through, so I'm going to dive right in. Listen, every year Summit is this celebration of marketing, right? It is the engagement party of the year. Not engagement party. You guys know what I mean. Experience party of the year. And every year it kicks off by getting to spend a few minutes with Adobe CEO Shantanu Narayan. This year he issued a very interesting statement. He said that with digital experiences in the digital economy, digital experiences need to get personal. And I think for those of us who have been in marketing for maybe more than a minute, we start to hear about personalization, and it is really easy to get very cynical and to kind of give that an eye roll. But what I really liked about how Shantanu framed the conversation is that it's about personalization at scale, but both personalization and scale are getting completely redefined. We're not talking about just having the capacity to put someone's email or their company name or even, a different image on the top of their email. It's about looking at their entire journey. It's about looking at that customer and really delivering those moments, delivering those answers, delivering those assets, the experiences that are based on their context and their reality and their real time, right? And so I think when we start to talk about personalization at scale, we're talking about something very different here. We're talking about scale that isn't just how do we blast all this personal stuff out to all the people in our database, but it's more about how do we have the multitude of one-on-one relationships and dynamics that we really need to have with all of these audiences of one, these profiles of one, all of this robust and rich data that we now know. How do we make sure that we're having these journeys, we're having these conversations, we're building these relationships all the time? So I think that's really what we were talking about, and I appreciated that's what the setting was, and this is where we started. When we start to talk about Adobe's technology, again, we get our annual peek at the Adobe Marketecture. But the important thing here is that they have really established that the Adobe Experience Platform is the foundation on which all of these applications sit. So you're starting to hear more things like these are different integrations and these are different applications that are being built really from the ground up on Adobe Experience Platform. So we're really unifying around that single view of the data model. We're looking at this as being a cloud native experience. So again, I think it's really important that we're now seeing this kind of consistent drumbeat of the Adobe Experience Platform as being the foundation and these really core applications being built on top of that platform, yet fully integrated and able to pull in APIs from all across the ecosystem and some of their most important partners, whether it's someone like Microsoft, whether it's an organization like ServiceNow. We're starting to see the real importance of having that cloud native, having that composable architecture, and having that foundation sit under all of these applications. So I thought that was really important to reinforce and re-see during Summit. Summit's conversations really focused on kind of these 3 core pillars of Adobe Experience Cloud's business, right? Real-time customer data, so being able to not only ingest that, but being able to analyze that, to have actions, and to really create from that. The content velocity, the speed at which we're able to not only create and approve and collaborate, but then also collaborate and co-create with our customers, right? And those seamless customer journeys, how are we able to make sure that we aren't kind of engaging in those weird linear funnels anymore? If there is anything that I would say was the theme of this summit, it was an integration celebration, right? It was a party of really being able to see all the individual things that Adobe can do and really starting to connect the dots, right? This was not just about saying, oh, okay, well, we bought Marketo, so we're going to integrate it. Oh, we bought Workfront, we're going to integrate it. That wasn't it. It was, let's track the work of marketing and take all of these tools and create integrated solutions that allows the work of marketing to really flow and the work of engagement to really operate at scale. And I think that's a really important thing that at least I pulled away from Summit this year. A couple announcements that I want to highlight here. We see the integration of Adobe real-time customer data platform with Adobe Target. So now we're really seeing that kind of bridging the gap between those big anonymous segments that we're able to pull from our target data, and really being able to bring that in and start to natively look at and call up those targets and those segments as we're looking at our real-time CDP profiles. And so again, this is really about making sure that we are understanding our customers in different ways with different layers. I mean, it's just like Photoshop layers, right? We're just peeling them all back. We're getting to see all the different things that make up that context and that relevance for that customer. So really important moves that they're making in regard to data. This is probably my favorite announcement that was made through Summit. It's this integration with Adobe Workfront, Adobe Creative Cloud Enterprise, and Adobe Experience Manager assets. So you've got AEM assets, a really great DAM tool. That is the endpoint that a lot of marketers kind of will see and live in. It's where you can pull the assets from, right? But the process of getting it there has largely been a disconnected area, right? So now we have, through Workfront and through this integration, we're seeing that you can now really start to take those creative ideas, those iterations, the projects where everyone's working on together, especially with our creative colleagues, and really start to streamline not only the collaboration process, but the approval process, and getting those resources into the asset manager that then launches a whole new world of personalization and opportunity for utilization of those assets. So really liked this, the introduction of this integration and of this new solution. Finally, I want to point out that there have been a lot of moves on Adobe Journey Optimizer, this time with omni-channel journey personalization. So it's not just about email. We're talking about multi-channel, omni-channel personalization and engagement through mobile, through social. We're talking chat and web is also on the roadmap. So we are truly seeing that omni-channel journey that can be personalized through that single pane of glass. So again, really important integration things. Summit isn't Summit without a roster of really great keynotes, and that certainly did not disappoint this year. We got to hear from Ryan Reynolds, of course, the actor turned marketer turned actor turned marketer and agency head again. Regardless, I actually really gravitated towards the Prada story. Not because I wouldn't love to, go bag shopping at Prada, but they brought up a really interesting point that Prada has really almost trained its customers over decades to expect a really immersive one-to-one experience when they go in store. But how do you start to replicate that across all of your brands on a digital footprint? And Prada's really been able to do that. And so I think that was a really great conversation and a really great story that we were able to hear. And you get to see some really cool shoes and have that digital experience. I loved it. I thought it was great. Listen, my favorite part of Summit is sneaks. I'm not going to lie. I love sneaks. If for any other reason that it gives me the inspiration to see what people are thinking about internally at Adobe, because they're sweating the things just like we are, right, in marketing. So I love seeing some of those introductions. And yet again, Sneaks absolutely was the integration celebration, the Sneaks edition, hosted by the incomparable actress Kristen Bell. It was fun. It was engaging. I really do honestly hope that I see every single one of those Sneaks in a product, because they were exceptional. Again, tying the work of marketing together. Summit 2022, it is in the bag. If you did not get a chance to check it out, go visit summit.adobe.com. My big hope is that we get to do this live and have a big party next year. I'm hoping that we're all safe, that we're all healthy, that we're all going to be able to get together and kind of enjoy what the party and the celebration of engagement and experience is all about. But in the meantime, check out the sessions. There's a great customer session with T-Mobile. I thought they did a fantastic job. Really, I could watch those customer sessions over and over and over again, because it's about the hard work of marketing. But well done yet again, another year in the books. And now back to more CRTV. Well, that's a wrap, everyone. We are closing out episode 30. Thanks for watching. We're going to see you next time. Listen, you're going to see another round with Doug Henshin and Diane Hinchcliffe coming up in 2 weeks, I believe. It's going to be episode 31, but until that time, you can always follow us on Twitter, CRTV_show. You can follow me. Hey, it's all right down there. You can follow Holger. And as always, it's been a blast, my friend. We'll see you next time. Hey, so what are we doing?
Yeah, what are we doing? Why are we here?
Well, welcome to CRTV.
That should be, instead of the Constellation stinger, it should just be Hannah saying, well, welcome to CRTV. And that's going to be our new intro. The worst was anytime cameras would get into the faces of my soccer players and they'd be like, here are these 23, 24-year-old kids. They've never been on TV before. And we would have to do all this media training with them beforehand. But all the media training was things like, when the camera is pointing your direction, please do not snot rocket. I know that your nose is stuffy, but please do not. You're on TV. Please don't do that. I need you to be clothed, and I need you to do the nightly news without exposing your nipples.
Okay, plastic glasses versus glasses, which are called glasses, right? So, yeah, no reflection, material science. Good luck 3D printing glass. The problem only is that
substrate science, dude. Material science. What are you, Madonna, talking about your glasses?
Do you only have one pair of glasses, Liz? Come on, let's be honest.
Okay, listen here, buddy.
Yeah.
I got my old lady computer glasses, and then I got my old lady so I can see far and not crash into things in my car glasses.
See? And despite just turning another year yesterday, I still don't need bifocals. I feel so young.
You know what?
How old are you, Holger?
This is a record here. It's a double number. It's a double number.
You know you're getting old when you're reading glasses. Just become your glasses.
Your eyesight is highly dependent how good your liver works. If you do the right thing to your liver, you instantly see better.
So if you stop drinking?
If you stop drinking yourself blind drunk, you aren't blind anymore.
Wow, you guys are full of surprises. Holger hasn't drank till 17. You guys both look way younger than you actually are. Wow.
This is why we do ConstellationTV, right?
It's all in the last name. It's Miller family genes, baby.
Because nobody will see this anyway, right? So
that's what you think. I'm the one in control of the bloopers.
Okay, seriously, what are we doing here?
33, the big 3-0.
We're catching up to my age. This episode is older than Hannah.
I feel like we needed to have like a celebration or like poppers.
Yeah, had we known this before, right? We would have driven up the production cost, right? So
I'm angry at people who are in that 30 to 40 range. 30, you kind of hit 30 and you're like you just kind of get good with everything. Now 40, you're really like, don't tell me what to do. I'm fine. I'm wearing sweatpants all day. Suck it. Yeah, 40 is just like the coast into leisure winter. Okay, let's roll. You go.